Hi, I'm William Shakespeare, and oh shoot. Hi, I'm Keiko Green, and let's talk about the bed trick. Yeah, so my name's Keiko Green. I'm a playwright, screenwriter, and performer. I was born and raised in Georgia, but I actually lived in Seattle for 7 years, where I mostly worked as a regional theater actor before going off and getting my MFA in playwriting. And I, over my 7 years in Seattle, was in 7 plays at Seattle Shakespeare Company. Yeah, my first play with Seattle Shakespeare Company was Othello, in which I played Bianca. And then the last show I did there was in 2019, in which I played Helena in All's Well That Ends Well, which is kind of where the bed trick actually was birthed. Yeah, so the bed trick was written, I was performing in All's Well That Ends Well, which was my last show at Seattle Shakespeare Company before heading off to grad school. And the play was, it's basically birthed from some talkbacks we were having with student matinees afterwards. The teenagers wouldn't stop asking questions about the bed trick and the nature of it, and kind of wrapping their minds around what it meant that the hero of a story would be kind of manipulating the man that she loved into sleeping with her. And it really got me thinking, because I think that we have such a strong sense of black and white, especially these days. And I feel like there was an opportunity to be more in conversation with the bed trick itself and what the place of Shakespeare is in a contemporary culture, and also what it means if we can kind of embrace the murky gray instead of labeling everything as right or wrong, black and white. And so that's kind of what the play is attempting to do. In terms of how the writing process of the bed trick went, about 1.5 years ago, Michaela first reached out to me and asked if I had anything that might be right for a Seattle Shakespeare commission. Personally, I wasn't so interested in the idea of a straight adaptation. I just really wanted to be in conversation with Shakespeare and something from that. And after the production of All's Well That Ends Well that I was in, I had actually really been thinking about how to kind of be in conversation with that specific play. At first, I was thinking about writing a sequel to it, which I partially ended up doing in a way. But anyway, once I pitched this idea to Michaela for the bed trick, it ended up becoming a little bit expedited. And but because I had been thinking about the idea for years, the actual writing took probably like a month or two. And by last summer, I had a draft ready. We workshopped it one time here in Seattle, and then we workshopped it one time at Chance Theater in Anaheim, where we got to have 2 public readings, actually. So we got to test out some of the material, which was really nice. And now we are in the 3rd week of rehearsals. And the script is changing still. I think it will probably change until opening night. There have been little tweaks that we've been making. There are trims that we've been making. And there's also some bigger structural things that we're still figuring out. I accidentally almost always write comedies, with a few exceptions. I think that I really always want to earn the emotional moments. And on the way to those emotional moments, find a lot of fun with an audience and make sure that the emotional moments feel like a release, or that they're getting to release in the fun. One thing that's been so interesting about working on this play was that even though I was writing a contemporary play, by being in conversation with Shakespeare, Michaela and I talked about structuring it a little bit like a Shakespeare play. So it's written in 5 acts. There are bursts of poetry, and sometimes there's contemporary verse that people may or may not pick up on. And weirdly, being in conversation with Shakespeare has made this play feel even more contemporary and experimental than I was ever imagining. In essence, the bed trick is, there's 3 people, and person A wants to be sleeping with person B, but person B and person C switch places. So person A thinks that they're sleeping with person B, but they're actually sleeping with person C. And in that is usually like rules about they're supposed to be sleeping with this person because they're betrothed or something like that. But in general, it's like extremely chaotic, and it's been really fun to kind of rip apart. First of all, a world premiere is always going to be tailored around the actors that are in that first world premiere production. So all of their idiosyncrasies and the specificity of their character really makes its way into the play. So getting to see a world premiere is such a treat. My favorite actors to work with, whether or not it's a Shakespeare-related play, is actually classically trained actors who are good with contemporary language, because they know how to use the language, they understand rhythm and musicality, and they also tend to, instead of asking me to just change things, they really try to make the text work first. So for this play, not only do we have these amazing classically trained actors who are so good with the contemporary language, they're also getting to use that to be in conversation with Shakespeare, and that kind of expertise is really, really hard to find sometimes. When I did this play in 2019, George Mount was in the production, who was the previous artistic director at Seattle Shakespeare Company. And he, actually a lot of the things that he mentioned thematically about forgiveness, those are themes that have really made their way into the story. So this play feels so much the product of these Seattle Shakespeare specific experiences, and I find it so rewarding to be able to bring it back to Seattle Shakespeare. Okay, so we have 6 characters in the play, very, very specific. They're all in transitional points in their lives. We have 3 teenage freshmen in college roommates, and they're in the first couple weeks of school, Harriet, Marianne, and Lulu. And those are the gals that we meet first. Each of these 3 girls is really kind of navigating the world and interacting with the bed trick in 3 different, very specific ways that eventually converge by the end of the play. Harriet is in rehearsals for All's Well That Ends Well. Lulu has a interesting discovery and then makes some interesting choices via online dating. And Marianne realizes that her parents' romantic history was perhaps a little bit more complicated than she originally thought. And so all of those 3 stories are bed trick adjacent or directly connected. And and by the end, the way that they kind of interweave and explode is quite a wild time. And also we have 2 parental units of Marianne, so we get to actually see how that family mess, the consequences of something that happened years and years ago. And we also meet Willis, who is Lulu's boyfriend, who is in the town just 30 minutes away. And he is also trying to navigate the world for the first time as someone who really doesn't have the same kind of support units around him that the girls do. I can't really say that there's an antagonist in this play. I have built a play of 6 characters that I love and care for and empathize with. It's fun and chaotic and really fast. I think it'll have people at the edge of their seat. So I'm a biracial Asian girl from the South. I grew up in Georgia. So my world has always kind of been in between 2 worlds. And I also think that sometimes Asian American artists are put into a kind of tricky place where our work is, people only want Asian American themed work from us, or they think that work speaks for the monolith of Asian America, which I find really kind of tricky and troublesome, because we don't expect, some of our colleagues to be speaking for their entire racial background when they write a play. So there's a little bit of trickiness in that, because I do think sometimes it takes away from our opportunity to be specific and detailed. Like, this is a story about this one character who's going through this one specific struggle. Having said that, I think that all of my plays are Asian American plays because I'm writing them, and also I have so much more to say too. And so to get to discover and work on a play that has, those thoughts interwoven in, and but also isn't about being Asian American. It's about getting those ideas and themes that feel unique to my experience and actually making them universal so everyone can encounter it. It's like my favorite kind of work to do. And that's why I feel like the diversifying of our industry is going to be just so, it just makes the work so much better and better, because it's not just about having more Black plays or Asian plays. It's actually about how we write about whole worlds, and how our same, exploration of a specific theme, like our specific histories reflect themselves in that, no matter what we're writing about. I started as an actor, and I've made my way into writing. And I think that being an actor, I think being multi-hyphenate helps always, like one helps the other. Specifically, being an actor and a writer, each helps me significantly at the other thing. I think that being a writer in terms of acting, makes me so much clearer about I am a cog in the telling of this whole story as a unit. And so instead of thinking, what's my arc, what's my track, now I start to think about like, what's my purpose in this larger story? And I think that's made me a better actor. And the opposite side of that, I think that being an actor makes me such a better writer. It means that all of my characters change. It means all of my characters want change from the person they're talking to. It means that dialogue tends to feel a little bit more alive, and I can actually rewrite in the room. Not all writers love to do that, but in rehearsals, I'm up on my feet asking actors, what did you want to say there? You didn't want to say that. And then we can have a conversation and start writing stuff and workshopping text in the rehearsal room, which feels so alive, and it makes the script feel like it's a living, breathing document. I've always been really interested in stories where people are caught in the middle. And sometimes I feel like we're being kind of inundated with stories where it's just one thing or the other. It's super clear what is right and what is wrong. And I feel like there's an opportunity to tell messier, complicated stories about flawed people who are just trying to do their best. And so I hope that people walk away with a newfound understanding of, or just a reminder that everybody around you, even when you're really disagreeing with them, they're dealing with a whole lot of complicated stuff, and maybe we can show a little grace. And also, I hope that people leave with their stomachs hurting because they laugh so hard. So I want both of those things. My biggest advice for people that are wanting to perhaps try playwriting is, first of all, you really can, and don't be too precious. That's probably like the biggest advice, is just learn to get your work out there, even when it's like really, really stinky, bad draft. Everyone will understand. But one thing I think is really important is, what a playwright does is we create these characters that we love, and we just find endless ways to torture them. and truly what it is you want to write characters that are so three-dimensional, and then you want to think about, like, what's the most complicated thing that could happen for them here? How can I create the most juicy conflict for these people? And not only let them surprise themselves, let them surprise you. Constantly when you're getting to a new space, it's like in a script, there is an obvious way that something could go, but what is the surprising direction where a character might choose a character that you think has been making some bad choices? What's the surprising moment of kindness that they might offer? Or a character that you really love, what has to happen for us to see their ugly side? The more that you can start to experiment with that for yourself, like it's a little bit of a game of just constantly, like, I've done this with them, so what does this version look like? Like, how do I see the part of them that's like the most vulnerable? That's when you get to the heart of like a really, really juicy story. First up, my play, You Were Cordially Invited to the End of the World, which was originally a commission from ACT Theater here in Seattle. That's gonna be having a reading at South Coast Rep in Southern California as part of the Pacific Playwrights Festival. So tell your friends who are in LA adjacent areas to please come. And a TV show that I wrote for called Interior Chinatown will be premiering on Hulu, hopefully this summer. And it stars Jimmy O Yang and Ronnie Chang and some amazing, amazing Asian comedians, and just an incredible cast. And I got to write one of the episodes, and it was my first TV job. So please, please, please check it out.
Any last words for the people?
Yeah. Listen, this play is so funny. The cast is so funny. It's a tiny bit sexy, but it's mostly awkward and clumsy when it talks about sex. And I think it's a really kind of hysterical play that I think young people will relate to. More elderly folk will be reminded of how impossible it feels to be a teenager. And also, we really talk about these adult characters too, who are just trying to figure it out. And I think we have this expectation of parents being defined by being parents, but here we see parents who are, oh my gosh, they are struggling and really trying to reinvent themselves in the middle of transition. That's it.
Wow.